Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Getting back to work on the Cobra in this video. Last video we finished getting the throttle linkage set up, installed, throttle body and turkey panner mounted on the engine. Everything is functioning, just needs a final adjustments once I finish up with my brake and clutch pedal modifications. But anyway, gonna be getting back to work, plenty to still do. As you can see, the dash is still out. Still have to finish up all the wiring for the EFI, the fans, getting all the engine stuff put into place where it needs to be as far as the timing, swapping valve covers, sealing up some leaks and whatnot. So that being said, I am going to get back to work on the car. All right, so first thing I'm going to address in this video is the air temp sensor for the ECU. I took an approach where it is two birds, one stone in this approach. I needed a spacer for the air cleaner because the throttle linkage was hitting the bottom of it, just because it's that small period correct style air cleaner. It just wasn't enough clearance. So you would either have to cut down the throttle linkage for clearance because you need about 3/8 inch, I think it is roughly, or I also had the issue of needing to get an air temp sensor somewhere, and I didn't want it to possibly get wet because it is a sensor, it is not protected. If you had this just loose in the engine bay, it gets wet, it could probably damage the sensor. I wanted to put it in the actual airstream, so two birds, one stone. I got this 1-inch spacer off Amazon for like 12 bucks. Went ahead and drilled a hole for the grommet and got the grommet installed, got the sensor installed. Looks like it is going to fit perfect right here. I think I gotta trim the grommet a little bit, but should fit perfect once I trim the grommet, and then go ahead and put the sensor on top of it, or the air cleaner on top, bolt it down, plug in the sensor, and be good to go. So I'm gonna grab an X-Acto knife, do a little trimming on the grommet down there at the bottom so the lip on the actual throttle body will clear it. And that is how it's gonna look. You can see the sensor plugged in right there. Only issue is the stud that came with the air cleaner that was thread into the throttle body is not long enough, so I will have to get a longer piece of threaded rod and then make it fit, or bolt. I'll figure it out once I go to the hardware store. But other than that, that should be all set, and that solves my issue of the air temperature sensor and having it in a covered, safe location where it will not get damaged by the elements. All right, and for anybody going this route, I just measured the distance between the base of the throttle body where the threaded hole is to the top of the foam air cleaner, and then added the distance that the threaded rod goes into the acorn nut that came with it, as well as the distance that it goes down into the threaded portion of the throttle body, and it is 4 inches. So if you were doing what I'm doing with this spacer, which is a 1-inch spacer, you will need a 4-inch long piece of threaded rod for the Edelbrock Pro Flo 4 EFI throttle body. So 4 inches. Time for a quick update. Just been keeping myself busy with wiring, and I know that's not exactly the most exciting topic, so haven't been filming too much. What I've been doing is going through actually the fuse box and a fuse diagram that I printed off, and just basically updating things for what each circuit is doing. I'm most of the way through. I've got a couple more to go through. And the reason I'm doing this is I am going to start integrating the fan relays. That's what these two relays here are going to be. I've started kind of getting an idea of wiring for those. I've got these two loose wires here. This is a fuse to an old 30 amp fuse in the fuse box. This is going to be my main power for fan number 1. I've got this hooked up to another fuse in the fuse box. It's a smaller rating. That's going to be the power to both the relays, the switch side of it. So just been kind of messing around. I will need to run the wiring from the ECU wiring harness under the hood into the cabin, because I am going to mount the relays in here. I thought about putting them in underneath the hood, but being that these are more modern relays, they'd look a little more out of place unless I hit them and the wiring colors and stuff. It's easier just to tuck them under the dash at this point in time. So that is the plan. That's kind of what I'm working on right now. So I'm just gonna get back to it. All right, so I finished going through the fuse box, all the wiring, chasing it, seeing what is used and what is not used. So I now have a new fuse diagram here. Probably should have been a little bit more prepared. As you can see, looking on here, many fuses are no longer used, but this at least gives me an idea of what's going where. You can see I've got one that I've got marked as gauges plus. That's a wire coming out that I have this little trailer connector or whatever. I'm going to use this for some of my behind the dash things. It at least gives me some wires to work with. So I did run a positive fused to the blue wire in this, and then that will power all of my gauges that need to be powered, which actually I don't think there's many. So it should be pretty easy. But yeah, as far as the fuse box itself goes, I only have a handful of wires that are no longer claimed. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm just going to basically wrap them and seal the ends in case in the future I need something electric to be run. The only exception to that is this one here, this heavy gauge black with orange. This is actually a direct power coming off of that block right there. It splits out of the main feed for the fuse box that goes across here. All these are powered off of the same wire. This, what I'm going to do is for my fan number 2, which I don't have yet, but that'll be the fans that go in the cowl in the front to look more original. I'm going to use that with an external fuse holder, and then that'll power the relay for fan number 2. Fan number 1, I was able to tie into what used to be the power window system fuse right here, the pink. This red wire here, this is what's going to be the main power for fan number 1, which will be the internal cooling fan that you can see there on the radiator. So next on my list is to start figuring out where I'm going to mount the relays for the 2 fans and start messing around with getting those wired in. All right, and here's the answer. I had those other 2 relays previously up there. I was able to just clip all 4 together and just drill some holes. Well, use the self-tappers. So, the old holes are, kind of behind the relays because I did have to shift them over a little bit, but they at least fit there. So those 4 relays are for the 2 fans and my headlight system. Then the large relay over there is my main ignition relay. It's a much heavier duty unit. So just need to get everything wired in on the 2 fan relays and go from there. So that being said, I am going to start getting things wired and put in place. All right, so fan wiring, first thing I did on both relays was the 2 red wires, which these are the 87A terminal on the relays, not used. Went ahead and used some shrink wrap and just wrapped back and covered the ends, so these are just going to get tucked away. They are not used at this time, so that's the first thing done on the relays. All right, next up was the grounds. So I got the 2 black wires coming off the 2 new relays, just spliced them together into a terminal, new hole here, grounded same spot as the headlight grounds are, well, right next to them. So pretty good ground, works fine for the headlights. So grounds are done. What I have left is the 2 blues, which those are going to be the power in, I believe. The yellows will be the power out when the relay is activated, and the whites are the 2 triggers. So I'm going to get to work on getting the powers hooked up. All right, and here is fan number 1 relay, the blue, which is the pin 30 on the relay. I hooked that up to this red wire, which that goes down in the back of the fuse block into a 30 amp, which used to be for the power windows. So that is my main power feed for fan 1. As I said before, fan 2 is going to hook into this wire, which is just a hot power all the time, or once the key is in the ignition, there's no fuse on it. So I'm going to put an inline fusible link in that one, 30 amp as well, and then I will hook that up to the blue for fan 2. All right, so quick update. As you can see, there's 4 rivets in place now, and then the relays have moved. It's because the 2 screws, they went through actually into the engine bay, and I wasn't happy with how self-tapping screws looked coming through. So my mistake, I did put them in a little bit high. So I went ahead and put rivets in those holes. Looks a little bit better from the engine bay versus just seeing the jagged edge of a self-tapper. And then I lowered the relays down a little bit. So now they are below and they're no longer exposed in the engine bay. Went ahead, connected the wire for the main power wire to the fan 2 relay, which you can see right here, comes from the fuse box. And then I do have an inline fuse holder for it because this is a constant hot, this is a hot when switched with no fuse though. Other thing, just realized, I don't know what I was thinking. I had previously tied these two grounds together and grounded them. The way the circuit works to trigger, I need a positive to power both relays, and then the triggers from the ECU are grounds. So clip those off. The two whites are the positives. I'm going to put these together and then run these to this wire, which is a fused positive to power the relays, and then I'll use the triggers and put the individual triggers to these individual black wires. So and then the other thing is down here you'll see a red and a yellow. I ran these through the boot that's down there, and then they go out through the firewall hole into the engine bay. You can see them laying there. Those are going to be the main positive leads that go to the two fans. I also have a red and a yellow smaller gauge that I'll use for the triggers. That way they'll at least be color coordinated. So back to connecting wires together. All right, quick update. I got the two leads, the yellow and the red heavy gauge leads, soldered into the wires, the correct relays. So all that's left on the relays to hook up is the two black wires, which those are going to go to the individual triggers, which I have to run from the ECU harness. I also did tie in the white off of the relays, which was going to the 12 volt keyed fused wire that I had in the fuse box. So yeah, all that's left to do is get the triggers run. So I'm gonna go ahead, get over to the ECU harness, snip the ends off of the wires that are there, and then start running the two leads from that into these two relays, and that will be job done as far as the fan relays go. All right, update time. As far as the two fan triggers, I went ahead and I got those wired. You can see I have the ECU mounted back in place. Everything's connected. I did wrap the upper portion to cover where my splices are and everything of that main harness. As far as the fan wires go, there was another hole that I just had to screw in from old sensors in the firewall. So I just used that, opened it up, ran a grommet, and ran that second pair of wires through to the inside of the cabin. So those are coming in under the heater there. You can see there's two spots where bundled wrapped wires come through. Have them snaked along there. And then I went ahead and connected them to the two black wires in the relay, so everything's connected. You can also see that one screw that I had put in for the incorrect ground. I went ahead and put a big wire clamp on that, and then just kind of have the wiring running through that. That way it's not rubbing up against the steering arm anywhere. Just kind of keeps things in order. And then all my switches will go in the dash or hanging down below it for now. But that covers getting the relays for the fans wired. Next thing I need to do is actually wire up the fan in the front of the vehicle, and that will be complete. The wire for what will be fan number 2, which will be the front fans, I'll just tuck that away in the loom somewhere. All right, and slight change before I crawl under and mess with the fans, I decided to do a little wiring cleanup under here. As you can see, I did some bundling. It's hard to see from this angle, but I bundled up the wires that go through the firewall, and you can see that they are all wrapped there, and you can see them going through the grommet, which is now in place in the firewall, and everything is draped coming out here and just hanging out in the engine bay. So now I can start messing with sorting that out and wrapping and putting things where they need to go, reconnecting connectors that are staying, and then I can mess with the two heavy gauge wires that are going to be going to the fans, get those put in place, kind of routed, and go from there. Update time. As you can see, I kind of started running some wiring. I wrapped it some more, routed it kind of where it needs to go, and then the two main leads I had for the fans, those are wrapped, and I ran them through bulkhead there, and you can see them draped down there. And then I went ahead and I have the positive hooked into the fan. I did hook the fan up to a battery just to make sure I had the orientation right as far as which wire was positive, which was the ground. So that's some more wiring done. I also went ahead and connected things back up to the starter solenoid here. After running them down, I'll have to like zip tie things in place, or well, I'll use clamps just to make sure everything stays off the headers and whatnot. Once I have everything else connected under the engine bay, I'm at a point now where there's a couple of connectors that I don't remember what they connected to as far as like if there's something I still need or not. So I'm going to go ahead, go through the wiring diagrams and remove what I need to remove, connect what I need to connect, and then go from there. All right, so a little update time. It is the next day. After I got the one fan wire connected yesterday, I called it a day because I had some other stuff to get done. Back on the car right now, and I kind of got myself in a little bit of a rabbit hole that, if you watch my videos, you'll see that I tend to do that. I had a couple wires that were on the body harness that hooked up with the harness that I ran yesterday that I was curious. I couldn't remember what they were. It's been a while. So as you can see here, I've pulled the body harness through and I'm removing some stuff. Still in the harness is this connector, which this used to go to the coolant reservoir cap to give you the coolant level. So I'm gonna remove that from the loom. There was a wire for that needs to come out. Just cleaning up a few other things, and then just going to be able to rewire this. Also, there was a spliced positive that's just a butt connector, so I'm going to put a better connector in here, remove the electrical tape, get this cleaned up a little bit. And then just rewire, loom this. It'll also allow me to pull out the old small ground that was hooked up to the fan and put in a heavier gauge ground. So a little bit of cleanup work that I want to get done before I put this back in the car. And that way I can get it wrapped nice and neat and call it a day. So I'm going to get back to work on cleaning up this wiring. Real quick end result of my fix here. You can see I've got it rewrapped. I was able to remove that connector, which like I said, that's the old coolant level. It has a light blue and then a red with, I believe, yellow stripe. The red with yellow stripe went into the back of this connector, and I had actually already removed the other end of it in the body harness when I was cleaning that out, so I just snipped that. And then the blue was part of the small connector. Again, it was disconnected on the other side in the body harness, so I just had to cut it right there. So the only thing that's left here is this is a green with a red stripe. This is for your charge indicator. It goes to the alternator. And then pretty much everything that's left on this plug is lighting, I believe. And then just lighting, I believe. And then as far as the horn goes, that's on there too as well. Yeah, that's on there as well. As far as the horn goes, this had two connectors on it, and it was all just wrapped up and taped, but this will reach the horn. So I cut off the other end. There was, another like 10-inch section with a connector, and that's the one that was plugged in, and then this was just dangling loose. So I went ahead, cut the other one off. This will reach the horn where it's mounted. And then as far as this one positive wire that needs to go, I used one of my solder connectors and then shrink wrapped it so there's no more butt connector, because I actually pulled on it and it came right apart, which that's scary. So anyway, we are all set here as far as cleaning this up. So now I just need to there's like a plastic tube in here, so that's where I stopped undoing the electrical tape for now. I'll continue going down because you can see this is the old ground wire. I need to get this removed and get the new ground wire in there, but first I need to unscrew a few things and do some untaping. All right, update time. You can see I've got both the wiring harnesses wrapped in sheathing. They go up and over, pop out up there. So I'll still have to get everything connected up there, but it's all kind of laying out of the way for now. As far as the fan goes, I got the black ground wire spliced in. You can see I have it running through sheathing down here. Here's the ground dangling at the moment. I still need to find a place to connect that. But everything is all tucked in sheathing. Is also the red wire that will be for the front fans down the road. I cut that. It ends right about here, and I have it wrapped and then insulated for now. That way I can just pull it out of that sheathing down the road when I finally do get the fans. I'll have enough length for them. And then, so that's good to go for now. So it's just a matter of cutting or figuring out where I want to ground it and then installing the ground wire. But I believe this video has gone on long enough at this point. So I'm probably going to call it a video here. I'll go ahead and get it grounded. That's not a really big deal. No one really needs to see that. Next video, I will probably start off with dashboard, because I need to start working on getting the dashboard finalized and get the cover installed on it, so that way I can start getting this car back together, because that is going to be the big next step. You know, all of the wiring up here is pretty much cleaned up, just needs to be connected. So yeah, making good ground. So yeah, the big thing is going to be getting the dash in, then I can start reinstalling the gauges. I've got the majority of the wiring done for the new ECU. There's some mechanical stuff I need for the new ECU. So I'll probably start with the dashboard and then start working on the mechanical stuff. So that being said, yeah, I'm going to call it a video. If you like what you're seeing, if you're learning something, if you want to keep following along, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please hit the notification bell. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section. I do read them. I will reply. That being said, thank you for watching and have a great day.